This is my father's old gold atlas. It's the exact book he used to help him find spots to go prospecting back when he was my age. He even used this book to open up a couple of hard rock mines that he discovered were abandoned after World War One. And I wanted to share with you some secrets. I very much assume that this is what my dad looked like back in the 70s and 80s prospecting, let's be honest. I could only aspire to be that cool. One of the questions I get asked about every single day is this place, insert name place there, worth going for gold? Is there any good spots up around blah 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 to go find gold? Can I go to this creek and find gold? Is this a good place to go camping and prospecting and to find gold? Basically, I get asked a lot of, is this spot good to find gold? And the answer is I have no idea. I don't know. Because if I did know, I would be working the spot. So let me go over part of my research and explain how I go about it and some important things that beginners as well as seasoned prospectors who know what they're doing equipment wise but are struggling to find new ground may be struggling with. You're going to love this because I love this, so hopefully you'll love it. Metal detectors were developed during World War II to locate landmines, and some were experimented with for gold prospecting in Eastern Australia in the early 1940s, but with little success. It has only been with the development of very low frequency VLF units over the last 5 years that detectors have been recognized and accepted by prospectors as an efficient prospecting tool, which is a stark contrast compared to what we think of VLFs now compared to PI and various other technologies that are out. Anyway, that is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a map. There's heaps of maps in this book, and I want to find a particular one to show you what I'm banging on about. No one knows where the gold is, and if you do know where the gold is, you are working it. So that's the primary rule. What I mean by this is that I have been to places that have been rich in gold prospecting history and found very little gold. By the same token, I have been to areas barren of gold mining history but surrounded by workings and found lots of gold. This is to illustrate the point of gold is where you find it. It is not going to conform to your rules or anyone else's rules or hypotheses. Research is all about putting you with the best possibility of finding gold. And that comes down to doing things like reading. I'm going to show you a map in a minute of how I do this. It comes down to things like reading, researching on Trove, which is what I use. It's a newspaper library archive that you can use here in Australia to research history of areas. And the history tells you, okay, there was a mine in that area and it was only so many kilometers from such and such a store, and you can figure out where the store is because it's still in the town, or you find other newspaper records and you can work out where these old mines were. You can see place names quite often, that the names of things like gullies and creeks and whatnot will be named after miners or mines that were established in the area. Anyway, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is I can't tell you where the gold is. You need to take a pan or a metal detector or your dry washer or whatever equipment suits your area into the bush and take samples yourself. That is the way to do it. And when I say test everything, you need to test everything. Everything. Gold is where you find it. It is not conforming to your ideas or what we're taught in someone else's idea of where gold is. I'm almost always incorrect about where gold is. The way I find it is by bumbling my way through it until I do. I take my pan, or in some cases a metal detector, and I try all day on one certain stretch of creek line. And if I don't find gold then, I'll go back the next day and I'll try all the places I didn't think that would hold gold. So what I'm saying is you can check the inside, all the inside bends and find nothing. You can check all the clay layers and find nothing. You could check all the bedrock crevices and find nothing. And that's happened to me before. And then you find insane deposits of flour gold sitting in what looks like beach sand. It's where you find it. It's not going to conform to your rules. So don't be afraid to test everything within a suspect area. Now, this is how you narrow it down. This is the key to narrowing down, giving yourself the best chance to find it. I'm using this map, which is centered in Queensland, Australia. So I have no idea where this is, and this is the perfect example for me to use, because if I showed you a map of where I knew the gold was, it would probably make a little bit less sense. I want to show you how I would tackle a particular area. Now, if you are looking to where you can get maps, usually government agencies, so in Australia, Parks Victoria or Earth Resources, and again, Trove or National Library Archives can have parish maps. They are all places to start looking for maps. There are geological maps you can usually find on Google. Tourist information centers often have maps for people who come to visit the area who want to go prospecting. There are a whole range of different places you can get maps. You're going to have to dig around in one of those places, but more often than not, you'll find a map somewhere of the gold fields that you participate in this hobby in. Just persist with it. It can take a little bit to find it. But once you find your map of your area, we got a key up here that says alluvial workings marked by little dots. So we got to look for little dots on the map. Here we go. That is a really big main lead. We know this is a gully and these are gullies over here. This must be one very big gully. These must be mountains on either side. What I would be doing is looking for, first and foremost, where the old hard rock workings are. So we've got shafts here. That is a good place to start. So whether or not this is a shaft for hard rock or a shaft for something like what Jeff Williams is doing, putting in a drift mine and chasing ancient alluvial streams, that's to be decided when you get there. That's going to tell you a lot. You get there and it's a hard rock working, maybe a metal detector is in order. If you get there and it's alluvial workings, maybe you can leave your metal detector at home and take a pan or a sluice box, depending if there's water in the gully. Let's say we pick this spot, we go to this gully because the map says that there was alluvial workings there, there's historic mines in the area, and we get there and we don't find any gold. The old timers are really good and they strip most of it back, and there's just not enough gold to keep us interested in this spot. What would I do? The first thing I would do is expand my search. Now, the map obviously cuts off at this point, and I know these gullies here have gold in them because something is feeding this main gully. So I would be looking for major gullies off to one side. Now, if we had the rest of this map, I would assume that this gully would come down and probably connect in with this over here. So this is a really good place to come over and check. Yes, there are no old-timer workings, but it doesn't mean it's barren of gold. You have to remember that not all mines were registered with the mines department. There was a lot of illegal miners out there because it cost a lot of money to put in a claim. It cost a lot of money in taxes that you got to pay to the government, in licensing. It takes a lot of money to establish a mine. Back in the day, everyone wanted a slice of cake, so there was a lot of illegal mining activity, and that means just because that gully doesn't have any registered mines on it doesn't mean that it doesn't have any unregistered mines on it. Now, the next thing, I would systematically walk up that gully and have a good sample of all the feeder gullies just to make sure in the bottom of the creek, see if there's water, metal detect, all that sort of jazz. Say we strike out there, well, that's when we can expand our search. Where else did they find gold on this map? Well, you can see they chased it down this lead and they got really patchy workings. It doesn't mean that there isn't gold from here to here. It just means that they didn't put in major effort in that stretch. Now, maybe it's really steep. Maybe it's too narrow. Maybe there wasn't enough gold for them to chase to open up a corporate enterprise. That has no relevance on you today. All these little feeder gullies could also be carrying gold because you've got to remember, a mountain erodes over time. This creek was up here at one stage and it's eroded down, or it was up here one stage and eroded down. Either way, there could be old bench deposits that have been concentrated in these side gullies. So I would be checking at the confluence of every single one of these little side gullies and in those dead zones. I'd also be checking out the more minor workings that we've got here. You can see here perfectly, we've got a feeder gully coming into the main gully here, and that feeder gully has gold. So is that because of a bench deposit from an old river channel, or is it because there's a hard rock mine up there that's not marked? What I'm trying to show you guys here is that there is no exact science to it. It's about answering questions you might have, and you can't do that looking at books, no matter how detailed they are, how good they've been written by however talented of a prospector wrote it, or wrote the article online, or made a video for YouTube. You can't take that information and turn it into gold unless you go out into the bush and try to turn your knowledge into practical application of working. So I encourage you. I don't know where the gold is. The places I do know where the gold is, I'm keeping for me because I've done hundreds of hours of research like this to go and find them. And you can get just as good, if not better results, depending on your geology and your area, if you're willing to take the risk of getting out of your comfort zone. And that's the number one sticking point for most prospectors who get stuck on the research phase. Is if you're a talented prospector and you've spent a lot of time in a particular area where you're getting okay gold and you don't know where else to go, you can get stuck in a rut of going into exactly the same spot. If you don't take that risk to venture away from the known gold, you will never find the better gold. And even if you do venture away from the known gold, you can always come back to it. You've got that as a fallback every single time you go out. But you've got to take that risk. Don't be afraid to test in new spots, test soils that look bad, go to areas that aren't necessarily known for their gold workings, but are surrounded by the right geology and the right history. And lastly, remember, it's all about fun. Finding gold is a fantastic thing to do. It makes me personally feel super alive to go out and do it. But the enjoyment is driven from the finding of the gold, not so much the extracting of the deposit. Once I get it into a jar, I don't really care about it. I care way more about putting my shovel into a creek I've never been to and seeing it come out in a pan after putting in all those hours of work. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this gave you some insight into research. Please give your dog a scratch behind the ears for me. Peace. I don't hit that stop button. Bye.